between 1947, end of 1947, till the 15th of May, 48, they managed to clear many of the Palestinians' villages, and they committed more than 22 massacres in order to push the Palestinians out. For instance, one very famous massacre, it was Deir Yassin, because it's near Jerusalem. And they were very, very, violent in that massacre in order to make it, for psychological warfare. So they will use, after this massacre, they used to come to other villages and say, do you want to have your faith like Deir Yassin? Go on your own. And that happened on the 9th of April, even before the establishment of the State of Israel. So it's the idea here that within these 6 months, there was this kind of ethnically cleansing going on in Palestine in order to kick out all the Palestinians out of the area which is supposed to be a Jewish state. However, if we are going to talk about what does it mean, the ethnically cleansing or the ethnic cleansing, we have 3 definitions: the Hutchinson Encyclopedia definition, the UNCHR definition, and the Wikipedia definition. We start with the Hutchinson. It says that it's the expulsion by force in order to homogenize the ethnically mixed population of a particular region or territory. The purpose of expulsion is to cause the evacuation of as many residents as possible by means of the expellers' disposal, including non-violent ones, as happened with Muslims in Croatia, expelled after Dayton's Agreement of November 1995. This is one, sorry, this is one of the definitions about that. It's, to kick out people in order to replace them with another people. The United Nations Human Rights Organization, they are saying that the report that published by them defined act of ethnic cleansing as including separation of men from women, detention of men, expulsion of houses, and subsequently populating the remaining houses with another ethnic group. And that what happened when they evacuated the cities and the villages in Palestine. They took over these houses and they lived in it. Netanyahu personally now living in Jerusalem in a house which belonged to a Palestinian family. And they kicked out this
Professor
Palestinian
Sa'an,
family from, yes.
I'm so sorry for interrupting you. Is it possible for you to show the bigger slide to make it full screen?
Yeah, when I made that, it didn't apparently. Is that okay? Can you see it now?
No.
Not yet?
All right. No, not yet.
Oh.
All right. No worries.
You see this though, right?
Yes, we can see it. That's all right.
The problem is that when I made
Thank
it, full screen, you don't see it anymore. I don't know why. Some technical issue. So as I said, Netanyahu himself now he's living in one of the houses, which was a Palestinian house built by Palestinian, and a Palestinian family used to live there, and they were kicked out in 1948, and now Netanyahu is living in that house. That's exactly what the definition is about. And the last definition, it's the Wikipedia. At the most general level, ethnic cleansing can be understood as the forced expulsion of undesirable population from giving territories as a result of religious or ethnic discrimination, political, strategic, or ideological consideration, or a combination of those, which is the case in Palestine, because they wanted a pure Jewish state. So anyone who's not Jew was evacuated. That include Muslims and Christian as well. And at the same time, on the ideological and strategic and political level, where they wanted to establish their own state on the expense of someone else's land. And that was the situation if we are talking about the definition. For this topic, the ethnic cleansing, I would, recommend to you the book of Mr. Ilan Pape, Professor Ilan Pape. He's now in Exeter University, and he wrote this book 2006, came out. It's called The Ethnic Cleansing of Palestine. It's a wonderful book. And by the way, Ilan Pape is a Jewish person, an Israeli. He used to live in Israel, and he was a professor also in Haifa University, but he couldn't stand anymore the situation in Israel and the atrocities against him because of his book. So he now lives in United Kingdom, and he's professor at Exeter University. But his book is worth reading, really, because it is really talk about what happened exactly in 1947-48, and about the ethnic cleansing and the intention by the Israeli at that time, or the Zionist leaders at that time, mainly Ben Gurion, to ethnically cleanse Palestine in order to evacuate all the Palestinians and to create a pure Jewish state. What happened in these atrocities, and they used many ways, either the conventional war, or the psychological part, as we mentioned, and the massacres, where the Palestinians in this area started to run away for different countries. North, they went to Lebanon and to Syria, Jordan, as well as to Gaza and Egypt, and also lots of them went into the middle of Palestine, which is West Bank now. That was the direction of the Palestinians who left their homes and forced to leave their homes in Palestine. And we ended up with usually when you lose a war, you might lose a war, and you say, okay, we lost a war and we lost a battle and we will continue. But in our case, we didn't lose a war. We lost a homeland. We lost everything. There is no Palestine anymore after this war. And what happened to Palestine? It became 4 areas: Israel, Gaza Strip on its own, West Bank on its own, and the Palestinian in the diaspora. And in the diaspora, we have them in Jordan, Lebanon, Syria, Egypt, and then the rest of the world. That's the result of the war map in 1948, where even not compatible with what the resolution of 181 in the United Nations even gave the Israelis. Instead of having 56% of Palestine as their own state, they continued the war, and they pushed more and more Palestinians to control more than 78% of Palestine, leaving us only in 22% of Palestine, and its 2 areas separated from each other. The one in the middle called West Bank, and the Gaza Strip down there. In 1949, the United Nations formed an organization called the UNRWA, and I think now it's all over the news, hearing of it, especially last night, the Israeli suggested a law to be passed in the parliament to consider the UNRWA, which is an international organization, United Nations organization, to consider it as a terrorist organization and not to deal with it. Can you imagine that? An international organization by United Nations considered as terrorist organization. However, they took over the issue of the refugees, because all this expulsion of the Palestinians from their homes in all the green area almost to Lebanon, to Syria, to Jordan, and to the West Bank, and to Gaza Strip. And they start creating refugee camps for them in these areas. And these refugee camps numbered around 58 refugee camps. In Lebanon, 12, Syria, 9, Jordan, 10, in the West Bank, 19, and in Gaza Strip, 9 camps to hold these Palestinians who, for the first 2 years of the war, after the expulsion, they spent those 2 years in in under the trees and anywhere without anyone helping them, like the situation now in Gaza. No one is helping, no one is giving them anything until the UNRWA was established in 1949. The number of the Palestinians who were expelled and ethnically cleansed from Palestine is around 900,000. 900,000. 750 of them, almost three quarter of a million, were registered officially by the refugee organization, which is the UNRWA. So the UNRWA counted and registered around 750,000 Palestinians and considered them as refugees. But we are talking about 900,000. So what happened to those 150? Those we are talking about middle class and upper class Palestinians who found their own way without needing, the help of the UNRWA. Some of them, moved to Lebanon. Some of them moved to Cairo. Some of them to Europe, and some of them have their relevance in the West Bank, and they didn't need to register themselves as refugees and to take the, the help and aid from the UNRWA. I'll give you an example for that. Do you know that? Definitely you heard of Edward Said, Dr. Edward Said of Brown University, Columbia University. Edward Said is a refugee, but his family was a rich family, so they moved to Lebanon. They lived there, and he went then to United States and he finished his studies. So he's a refugee, but he's not registered as a refugee. So we have differences in the numbers of the refugees here. The UNRWA registered 750,000, and there is also 150,000 were not registered. The UNRWA supposedly have 7 tasks to help the Palestinian with: emergency response, like what's going on now in Gaza, infrastructure and camp improvement, to build the houses and to build, accommodations for the Palestinians, microfinance for, to help the Palestinians, because it is the name of the UNRWA is United Nation Relief and Work Agency. Try to provide work to the Palestinians, relief and social services, protection, health, and education. All these tasks are taken by the UNRWA. So they are, responsible for the education of, we are talking about around 1 million students and child in all the areas. Health also, they have clinics, doctors, and in all refugee camps. And protection, this is something, we can talk about it because it's not, they can't take any really measures in order to protect the Palestinian refugees, not only in Gaza or in West Bank, but also in different areas around the world. However, this is, the camps, the diagram of the camps, numbers, and this is an old one, but the newest number by the UNRWA, that the number which started with 750,000 registered refugees became today by the UNRWA around 6 million Palestinians. We are talking about fourth generation. So now we are talking about 6 million. Our numbers as Palestinians, we are talking about 8 million refugees officially, because we consider the 150 also as also refugees. So the total number for us is 8 million, but those who are officially registered by the United Nations are 6 million today as we speak. Now, we can, let me just for a second. Okay. Show you going on here? Uh,
Are you all right, Prof?
yes, I'm trying to show a film, a video.
Maybe you might need to share your screen of the
Yes, that's what I'm trying to do.
not the
But when I
slides,
go,
but the
mm, just give me a second. Oh, technology, huh?
yeah.
Uh, Let me see now if it works. Otherwise,
I can try
yeah.
to if it's not working, Prof, I can try to
Mhm.
play the video. You can send me the link.
Okay, that yeah could do also. Uh, hmm, Alrighty. On in the chat.
Yes.
Yep. Yeah, I'll put it in the chat now. Here it
Okay.
is.
I'll try to. I can see it. All right, I'm playing it now. Let me see. Can you see it?
It's still going on working. Yep. Now the picture is there. I hope there is some.
Were you able is the
I
video
can't hear
showing?
anything. I can't hear anything.
All
I
right.
saw. Yeah. So
Okay.
start from the very beginning. It's not starting yet.
Yes, I'm trying to figure out the audio settings. My apologies.
It's okay.
Hmm. So there's no music?
No, nothing. If you can hear it, it's okay. It's most important. It's for the your audience to see it and to hear it. For
Okay.
me, it's fine. So if you
All
can
right.
start it from the beginning, yes.
All right. I'm sorry, Prof. But
Okay.
the link is in the chat box in case anyone wants to watch the video.
Yes, that's also
Yes.
another good option. It's talking about the problem of refugees from the very beginning. It's a BBC report.
All right. Let me see. Okay. Yes, we're just having it up right now. Um,
Not yet.
yep.
Yeah, yeah. Mm.
Yes.
Yeah. Do you hear the voice?
Nope, not yet.
No, neither me. Yeah.
Yes. We're just setting it up
Okay,
right
just leave
now.
it for everyone if they want to, copy the link and see it on their own. It's only 5 6 minutes video. So we leave it there in the chat. Anyone want to copy it and see it on his own time? He's talking about the problem of refugees generally. No.
I think the video is it's not showing any audio. So let me just get my
Yeah,
colleagues
just leave
to.
it for everyone if they want to copy it and see
Okay,
it on
okay.
their own in their own time,
All right.
because it's
Yeah, we can close the
yeah,
video maybe.
yeah, sure. And can you stop sharing from your side? Okay. So when we are talking about Palestinian Nakba, or the catastrophe, as it was called, it is about these Palestinian refugees who were kicked out and ethnically cleansed, and lots of them by force. By force, like as you can see of some of the pictures, by force they were, driven out of Palestine and kicked out to the borders, or being put in trucks and buses sometimes, and also kicked out of their land. And this picture, we can sometimes, this photo, we can comment on it. If people are running because of the war, do you think they will run in a, single file, in a very organized fashion? This is because the Israeli used to shoot on their right and on their left, shooting bullets on their right and on their left, to keep them going in one single file, in order to go directly to the borders. And this picture is near to the borders of Lebanon, where those people were driven to Lebanon in this way, and they were shooting around them till they, go to Lebanon, reach that borders. And you can see that there are many ways, and it mainly, it was by force and by, ordering people to leave. And this is from Haifa, where people have no way to go but through the sea. And some of those boats drowned, and the British, who were still in Palestine at that time, they rescued some of the refugees. And you can see it's a British ship, and military ship, and they rescued some of the Palestinians who were trying to flee the battle through the sea, and their boat drowned. We can see in so many ways that the expulsion of the Palestinians, it is an ethnic cleansing crime, which is considered as, world crime, especially after what happened in former Yugoslavia in the 90s. It is a crime and a war crime, and Palestinians were forced to leave their country, their homes, their businesses, their groves, their shops, their houses, left everything behind them, which was confiscated by this Zionist movement. So, but this expulsion of the Palestinians, of around 900,000, almost 1 million Palestinians, were kicked out of Palestine at that time. That was the result with the refugee camps. This is the beginning of the refugee camps, tents, and you can see how misery the situation. These are from the UNRWA, United Nations organization pictures. The last comments on this one. This is on the borders directly after the Israeli controlled. This lady, she's sitting in front of her door, her own house, and she can't get in because the borders became exactly as you can see it with this fence. So it's just, it's like 2 meters for this fence, and she could continue to live in her house. But definitely not. Now, what the Israel, after it's announced itself as a state in 15th of May, they started with all these villages that evacuated from the Palestinians or forcibly evacuated from the Palestinians and ethnically cleansed. They demolished these villages. We are talking about 531 villages, which was demolished totally and leveled with the ground. 531 villages. So you can imagine. And we are talking about 11 cities, which some of them was totally ethnically cleansed, and no one is living anymore, Palestinian living, like Tiberias, Bisan, Safad, those Bir Saba, those cities were major cities and big cities, and it was totally all the Palestinians were driven out of it, and now there is no Palestinian living in there. Jaffa, we still have some Palestinians. Haifa, we still have Palestinians. Akkar, we still have some Palestinians. Nazareth, which is mainly also a big city, most of the Palestinians are still there also in Nazareth. So, but other cities and other villages were either destroyed or Palestinians were driven out from their homes. Now, this is creating a big problem because as we talk about what's going on to the refugees, around 750, let's talk about the number of the United Nations, 750 became today around 6 million. They are scattered all over 58 refugee camps all over the region. Let's talk about how their situation today is going on in these countries, or the first country, asylum. Lebanon, we are talking about 12 refugee camps with almost 500,000 Palestinians living in Lebanon. But the situation in Lebanon, because the particularity of Lebanon is based after the French occupation and the French colonialism left Lebanon, and they gave them the independence. They created a system which is based on each religion and each sectarianism. So you have, Christian with their different sects, and you have the Muslims with their different sects, Shia and Sunni, and you have also the Druze. So we are talking about, the whole system, political system was built on sectarianism. So in Lebanon, if you like, in the elections for the president, everyone participate in the elections for president, but the president should be a Christian Maronite. Then they have the prime minister. The prime minister should be Muslim Sunni. Then the Speaker of the House of the Parliament, he should be Muslim Shiite. Then the head of the army, he should be Catholic, and so on. So the whole country is based on sectarianism. And at that time, they don't want to get the Palestinians into the system or into the country because they were afraid that the balances between the sects will be changed. So they force the Palestinians into these refugee camps and they put them in a very miserable situation. Lebanon is the most miserable situation for the Palestinian refugees now. This is some of the refugee camps. The Lebanese government is preventing Palestinians who are live in Lebanon, and some of them now, we are talking about the fourth generation born in Lebanon, they can't practice 73 professions. 73 professions Palestinians are prohibited of practicing them. So if you are a doctor, tough, you can't work in Lebanon. If you are an engineer, you can't work in if you are whatever disciplines, you can't work in Lebanon. So they work only in the refugee camps itself. But they can't, a doctor, he can't. There isn't a Palestinian doctor in Lebanon, treating everyone, only in the refugee camp. It means that Palestinians are allowed to work either in agriculture or in services, like, in sweeping streets or in a restaurant or something like that, which makes it really, really very hard for the Palestinians in refugee camps. Also, their situation, they are guests considered, even those who were born in Lebanon. If they leave Lebanon for any reason, they can't come back. They can't come back unless they obtained a re-entry visa to Lebanon. So they need a visa to enter their own country, which they were born in. So the problem in Lebanon is really very hard. And during this period, Palestinians also suffered from many wars between Israel and Lebanon, and especially 1982, when the Israeli attacked the Palestinians in Lebanon, and especially the massacre of Sabra and Shatila, two refugee camps near Beirut. And this is not decoration. This is the bullets. When they suffered from this massacre done by the Israelis or under the provision of or the order of the Israelis in Sabra and Shatila, where in 2 nights 3,500 Palestinians were killed brutally by Lebanese forces supported by the Israelis, and the Israelis were monitoring everything there. Now, the situation in Syria is a little bit different. Syria also, we are talking about around 500,000 Palestinians now living in Syria. But the Syrian government, since they are nationalistic kind of governments, so they welcome the Palestinians, and Palestinians there, they can live exactly like the Syrian. They have the same rights, everything. They can work, they can own, they can buy things, they can have property, everything like the Syrian, unless apart from running for elections or electing. So they don't participate in the political situation. They can't elect. They can't also nominated as, to be elected. Apart from that, they live exactly like the Syrian. But the refugee camps, as a matter of fact, is still refugee camp everywhere. It's the same situation, because when the refugees came to any refugee camp, 1948 or 49, the number was, let's say, 2,000, 3,000 in each refugee camp. Can you imagine after 75 years, the number became, very high number, and they started to build in the roads, they started to build up, and in order to, accommodate themselves, and lots of them leave the refugee camp to live somewhere else, but they are still refugees. And you can see all refugee camps are, they look alike in everywhere. This is the biggest refugee camp in Syria, called Al Yarmouk, near to Damascus. And during the war in Syria in the last 10 years, this refugee camp was targeted by the ISIS and the Nusra and those fanatic groups. And they destroyed most of the refugee camp, and lots of the Palestinians leave that refugee camp to go, some of them to Lebanon and some of them to other areas in Syria. Now there is an attempt to bring them back, and the Palestinian, even PLO, they are trying to do it with the Syrian to rebuild the refugee camp in order to bring the Palestinian back to the refugee camp. So this is what's going on in Syria in the refugee camps. Jordan is another thing, because Jordan, it's a little bit complicated, the situation. Jordan, after 1948, they annexed the West Bank. Hence, the name West Bank, it was new term or name. It was given to our area because it's the West Bank of River Jordan versus the East Bank of River Jordan, which is Jordan itself. So they gave us these numbers in order not to say that we are Palestinians anymore. And they gave us all the Jordanian passports and the Jordanian nationality. And we forget that we are Palestinians. We are Jordanian now. So all those who are living in the West Bank, as well as those who left Palestine to Jordan, became Jordanian. Do you know that even after the Palestinian Authority and today, after the Palestinian state, okay, we have Palestinian passports now, or laissez-passer, travel document, but still I do have also a Jordanian passport, which is valid. I can still have a Jordanian passport. So it's a little bit dodgy, the relationship here. Providing that around 70% of the population in Jordan are Palestinians, either refugees or those who went there during the 60s and the 50s in order to do jobs and things like that. So most of the Palestinians in Jordan, they have a Jordanian passport. So they are like national. They participate in everything. Only the Palestinians, or considered Palestinians, those who are living in the refugee camps, and we talk about 12 refugee camps in Jordan, and Palestinians are living there, considered as Palestinians. Apart from that, but they have the same rights like any Jordanian, and they have the passport, Jordanian passport as well. Apart from that, everyone there became a Jordanian in a way or another. And these pictures from the refugee camps in Jordan. We've been through 3 countries so far, and the scenery is the same for the Palestinian refugee camps. Now, some of the Palestinians went to Iraq, and others, they went to Egypt. Those who went to Iraq, well, the number is not that much, but anyway, they were there, and they were treated like the Iraqis by the governments, and especially during Saddam Hussein, before the American war on Iraq. And they were living normally like all the Iraqis, apart from voting and being elected, like the situation in Syria. They have the right also to obtain and to have property, to buy, to work, and everything. Then after the American invasion to Iraq and the collapse of Saddam Hussein government, what happened that the Palestinians were under a huge atrocities, and they were targeted by some of the Iraqis, and they were pushed out of Iraq to the borders with Jordan and to the borders with Syria, where there were 2 refugee camps were created, a new refugee camp created because of the war in Iraq. One called the Rashid on the borders between Jordan and Iraq, and another one called the Tanaf between Syria and Iraq. Both countries, Syria and Jordan, refuse to accept the entrance of these refugees into their country, because they are refugees and they have no papers, and because they don't want to change their situation. So the situation for them was really horrible, and especially they are living there in this refugee camp in the middle of the desert. the situation is very bad, and the UNRWA can't provide them with everything, because they are not included with the UNRWA activities. There is no refugee camps in Iraq. So no one taking care of them. So they were on their own, and their situation was miserable. In Egypt also, some of the Palestinians went to Egypt, a very small number also. But during Abdel Nasser, Jamal Abdel Nasser, the situation was great for them, and they can work, they can obtain houses, they can have property and everything like other countries, like Syria and Iraq, I mean. But after the death of Abdel Nasser and Sadat came, he started also with his policies against the Palestinians. So he gave them 3 years to dispose of all their property, otherwise it will be confiscated. So the situation now for them is very, very bad. That even sometimes try to hide that they are Palestinians and try to live normally in Egypt, but their situation is not a good situation at all anyway. Now, we talk about 1949, the United Nations General Assembly Resolution 194. 194. And this resolution is talking about the necessity to solve the problem of the Palestinian refugees by returning the refugees to their homes, which is in Israel, became Israel. The refugee wishing to return to their homes and live at peace with their neighbors should be permitted to do so at the earliest practicable date, and the compensation should be paid for the property of those chose not to return, or for the loss of or damage of their property. This was the resolution came out by the United Nations. And when Israel wanted to become member of the United Nations, there was a condition. And the condition is to comply with this resolution, to return back the Palestinians, refugees, back to their homes. But the problem, where is their homes? We talk about, the demolishing of 531 villages. So for Israel also, this is absolutely insane. It means that will change the demography of Israel, and definitely the pure Jewish state that the Zionist movement wanted. So they refuse, in spite of the fact that the membership of Israel in the United Nations is conditional with the compliance with this resolution 194, which is till today, after 76 years, Israel refused to comply with this resolution. But they comply with other resolution which created the partition of Palestine. They accepted that. The partition of Palestine and creating a Jewish state, they accepted that. But another resolution for the United Nations saying that the refugees should go back home, they don't accept it till today, which is creating a big problem for Israel. And always the question of refugees should be solved. Now, the human rights protection, which came in 1951, United refugees, that the United Nations should protect the refugees, and it's a protection agreement. It did not include any refugees who are under the protection of United Nations agency. And since Palestinians are under the United Nations UNRWA, so the Palestinians are not included in the agreement. Neither the United Nations, the UNRWA, can protect the Palestinians, nor the human rights protection resolution include the Palestinians. So if anyone did anything to the Palestinians, no one could help them in these refugee camps. Till Oslo Agreement, when Oslo Agreement came, I think personally that this is the silliest statement ever was talking about between the Palestinians and the Israeli. Look at this statement. Fair solution to the refugee problem. What do you mean by fair? What do you mean by solution? Yani, what is fair? The resolution say that they should go back to their homes and to have their property reinstated, and those who had loss or damage of their properties should be compensated. But this is very fake kind of a statement, fair solution, because neither the Palestinian nor the Israeli wanted really to discuss this problem. It is a very, very complicated problem. Because from the Israeli point of view, this is Ben Gurion, the first prime minister in Israel. We must do everything to ensure that the Palestinians never do return. And his famous statement that every Palestinian do memorize, the old will die and the young will forget. The old died, Mr. Ben Gurion, but apparently, and it's very clear today, that the young never forget. We are talking about more than 80% of the population of Gaza are refugees. And those are the ones who are, being exterminated today. Okay, while Golda Meir, also another prime minister, a very famous one, in a speech in the Knesset and the parliament, see anyone who speak in favor of bringing the Arab refugees back must also say how he expect to take the responsibility for it. This is an important issue for it. If he is interested in the state of Israel, because if you address the problem of the refugees, it means you are admitting the responsibility for creating this problem. Till now, Israel refused to admit that they were the responsible for the issue of refugees. It is better that things are stated clearly and plainly. We shall not let this happen. So Israel refused even to discuss the issue of Palestinian refugees, nor they admit their responsibility for creating this problem for 8 million Palestinians. Okay, so what do you mean by fair solution? As we say during the Oslo agreement, they came with this statement. I think from the Palestinian point of view, to at least calm the Palestinian down, okay, we will address the issue of refugees. And for the Israelis, it means nothing, fair solution. Maybe a fair solution that they should stay, from the Israeli point of view, should stay in their refugee camps or to be assimilated in the countries of refuge. Maybe this is the Israeli idea. So it's very fake statement, and I don't think it indicate anything. However, this we should make it unfortunately. Okay. Now, during the negotiations, the Israelis and the Palestinians, they send a group of academics, not politicians, because Israel don't want to take any responsibility for this kind of negotiations. So it is an academic work, few professors from Palestinian side, few professors from the Israeli side, and they will talk about the situation in order to, bridge the gap a little bit between the two situations. Now, the Palestinian demand, if you like, or the Palestinian full demand of the issue of refugees is the full return of the Palestinian refugees to their homes, having their property reinstated and compensated, because they're using it for the last 70 years. Again, what the Palestinians wanted, Israel recognizing the 194 UN resolution, the one that we talked about earlier. And last but not least, which is very important for us, Israel admission of its responsibility of the Palestinian catastrophe. The answer for that from the Israeli side was no. None of the above mentioned demands are going to be met. No. Then they have another session, to this negotiation, okay, let's make it easier a little bit, and we will go to a kind of something else. So the Palestinians said, okay, we'll have a symbolic return of 350,000 Palestinian refugees to their homes. And they were meaning at that time the Palestinians in Lebanon, particularly, because we said that very bad situation. And a compensation to the rest of the Palestinian refugees, a compensation for all the other refugees. And the last demand, still the same, Israel admission of its responsibility of the Palestinian catastrophe. The answer of Israel way, they said, okay, for the first demand, maybe, but only 100,000 over seven years period of time, providing that they personally lived in Palestine before 1948. Those who lived in Palestine before 1948, it means that their age today is more than 75 years. So we are talking about a bunch of elderly, okay, and over 7 years, half of them will be dead. So it's, and maybe also. About the compensation, Israel said it's not our responsibility. International community should compensate them. We are not going to compensate. But you took their land, you took their houses, you took even their furniture, you took their groves, you take their factories, their shops, and you don't want to compensate for that? They said, no, it's not our responsibility. The international community should compensate. And for the last demand, which is Israel should admit its responsibility, as usual, they said no. So now the idea is like this. What is the solution? We are talking about 6 million Palestinians, refugees recognized by the United Nations, let alone 8, who are living in 58 refugee camps till today. During Trump era, Israel is trying to dismiss all the issue of the Palestinian refugees because this is really very, very not only very complicated issue for them, but also it's a very dangerous issue for them. For any resolution of the return of the refugees, there is no Israel anymore. So during Trump era, Trump came out with this huge idea that the refugees are the one who really they used to be living in Palestine before 1948. So he reduced the 6 million Palestinian refugees to few thousands only. And he like dismissed the second and the third and the fourth generation. So if I am a refugee from the fourth generation or the second or the third generation, why should I live in a refugee camp? If it's not a refugee as a refugee, I was not a refugee. I was born in this refugee camp. But my father was in Haifa or in Jaffa or in Nazareth or in any of the villages which was destroyed. If that didn't happen, then I am, as a generation, I'm living in Palestine and I'm happy with my land, with my shop, with my, whatever, the business of my father. But now, since my father became a refugee, I became also, when I born, I took that as a refugee, which is quite normal. Now, Trump, he wants to dismiss all that and to recognize refugees only for those who are used to live in Palestine before 1948. Again, the elderly. Again, Trump administration, though they are the biggest contributor to the UNRWA, with almost more than 1/3 of its budget, $365 million every year. He stopped paying any penny totally because they want to dismiss the issue of refugees from the agenda. Israel now is trying the same. They are calling the Palestinians in Gaza under this bombardments that they are doing, leave, leave. And the first idea for the Israeli was in Gaza to push them to Sinai Desert, to Egypt, unless the Egyptians were very, very keen on not, having any Palestinians. Otherwise, it's a big problem. Palestinians do refuse now to be a refugee again, though they are now, the Israelis are pushing them from one area to another in Gaza itself, from the north to the center of Gaza, and from the center of Gaza to Rafah, and now from Rafah back again to the center. And this morning, there was a new massacre for these refugees who are now refugees for maybe 5 times, 6 times in Gaza war. And they bombarded their camps, which is tents, and tents made from nylon and some, cloth and wood and material. They created that, and they bombarded this camp in Al Muasi, killing more than 40 this morning, and most of them was killed by burning. They burned the refugee camp, this refugee camp. And though the Israelis said that this area is a safe area, go to it. And they forced people to go there. And when they go there, they bombarded them this morning. We woke up on this news this morning of burning this refugee camp. It's unbelievable. It's unbelievable. So we need a real solution. And the solution, in my opinion, and the opinion of the Palestinians, those refugees have the right, not only the legal right, but also the ethical right to go back to their own land, their own homes, their own property. And if that will bother the Israeli, tough. The Israeli created a law after the Israel was established, saying that any Jew in the world could come to Israel or return, as they say, return to Israel and become a citizen immediately. Any Jew have the right to come back, and those who were kicked out from their own homes, they don't have the right to return back. So we think that the only solution for the issue of the Palestinian refugees is the one-state solution. Two-state solution is not a solution because it became by now behind our backs. Two-state solution is a two-state illusion. What we are talking about now is one state. Israel won't agree to that, then Israel should change. No Zionism, not Israel, which is the atrocity, colonialist Israel. We have no problem in living with the Jews, but not with Israel or Zionism. And this will solve all the problems, the problem of settlements, the problem of refugees. And again, we are talking about an apartheid regime. Now the Palestinians are more than Jews in Palestine today. In the West Bank, Gaza Strip, inside Israel and Jerusalem, the number of Palestinians are outnumbering Jews living in the same area. So the only solution is to live together under one government, regardless of the religion or nationality, or maybe with two nationalities. Many countries have the same thing, like this, the Swiss example, or South Africa example, where everyone is equal. In Swiss, or Belgium, with the keeping every part keeping their own nationality. So either, regardless, this is not a problem. The problem is the essence one. It means that Israel, as we know it, should be scrambled, exactly like the South African regime during Pretoria apartheid regime. Without that, we have no other solution, and the Palestinian refugees will continue to suffer living in these refugee camps in a very bad situation all their lives and for generations, unless we solve the problem by bringing them back to one state for everyone. And this is the only solution we have. If that don't suit Israel, tough. You created the problem. You need to take the consequences. And you can't create a problem and you don't want to be responsible for it, even if that responsibility means the end of Israel as we know it, as a colonialist, racist regime, and the end of Zionism as the ideological background for this country. And this is the only solution for us as Palestinians. Thank you very much for your for hearing that. And I hope that you learned a little bit about what's going on in Palestine in this situation for the refugees and the ethnic cleansing. Thank you.
Thank you so much for enlightening us on the history of Palestinian refugees and the development of the ethnic cleansing, Professor Saad. Thank you so much for sharing your morning with us. It must be a very long morning for you so far, so I hope you've had breakfast. Um, your presentation, was very visual and elicits strong emotions. It's as if we were taken down a trip back memory lane, as if we're there to be able to put ourselves in the shoes of Palestinians who've experienced that. It's that you're not going to be able to see this in mainstream media because they don't really show it to you, especially the general public, unless you actually want to look for that information. I guess um, this is where it all boils down to the framing of the October 7th incident, where a lot of um, the mainstream media, especially in the West, they've been putting in information as if it's occurring in a vacuum, completely disregarding the decades of, as you said, in the of ethnic cleansing, um, expulsion, apartheid policies that Palestinians have had to endure. So that framing is very important. Um, I guess so. What Professor Saad has been sharing with us so far, just to the audience, is the Palestinian story is about displacement, expulsion, ethnic cleansing, and settler colonialism. A foreign population was brought in. They came in to settle at the expense of the natives because of Western guilt that wasn't even the the cause of the or the problem of the indigenous population. And then there you have natives being expelled, unable to come back to their land, their homes, forcibly, um, who've been living in their land for centuries. So I guess, Prof. Saad, what we're witnessing right now is just a continuation of that settler colonial project
It
until
is.
every inch of the land um, is, I guess, taken. So now we've reached the end, but we've reached the Q&A session. So if you have any burning questions that you would like to ask our distinguished professor, who's actually now, Prof, you're actually in Birzeit, right, in the West Bank?
Yes, the university is Birzeit. I live in Ramallah.
Oh, Ramallah.
Now,
Okay.
yes, now I am in Ramallah, and today we have the student declare a strike in a kind of a uh, emotional thing because what happened this morning for what happened in Gaza and especially in Rafah and this camp which was burned. So they declared today a kind of a mourning day, and today there will be demonstrations in Ramallah and most probably clashes with the Israelis near to Ramallah.
I see. I see. Are the protests, the demonstrations still
Yes,
ongoing?
yes, yes. In the West Bank. This
Mm,
night there was a demonstration at night in many cities in the West Bank because when we heard the news, it started at dawn. The this massacre, and when people hear it, immediately they took to streets and there was demonstrations in Tulkarem, in Jenin, in Ramallah itself, and in many cities in the West Bank to protest and to give a kind of a feeling of you know this what's going on in Gaza is not acceptable at all.
mm, I see. All right. Well, it seems that we have a question here by Muhammad
Mhm.
Izuddin. Yes, Muhammad Izuddin.
Hello, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good
Alaikum salam.
afternoon from Malaysia, doctor. My name is Muhammad Izzuddin Al-Haq. Currently, I'm studying at University of Malaysia in my fourth semester. My question is very crystal and clear, but this very interesting title of talk for this afternoon for me. However, I would like to ask you, what is the suitable term of the torture that Palestinian had this recent day? Is it ethnic cleansing or genocide? Because I do believe that every expert do not have any clear definition of ethnic cleansing. So, but genocide, UN, even United Nations reveals the definition itself. However, in terms of what we call with ethnic cleansing, none of the experts have the clear definition. Thank you so much.
Yes. Mm. Yes, thank you for your question. Yes, we know both crimes are crimes by the international law. The genocide, it's very kind of extreme kind of crime for the whole international community, as well as the ethnic cleansing, and especially the terms of ethnic cleansing in the political arena started after the plight of Bosnia and Croatia and Serbia after the collapse of Yugoslavia in the 90s. And the ethnic cleansing of the Muslims from Bosnia and from Serbia, where they live, in one country together, and that was on a religious basis. So people started to be interested, and they declared that the ethnic cleansing in such case is a war crime. Now we have two war crimes, if you like, but the first one is a genocide. What's going on in Gaza is exterminating for the Palestinian people. We are talking about, in these last 7 months, we are talking about more than 36,000 Palestinians were killed. 10,000 are still buried under the rebels, and we are talking about more than 85,000 who are injured and badly injured. So it's an exterminating, because Gaza is a closed area. There is no borders at all, and it's surrounded by Israel, and no one can do anything or go anywhere. Even because of that, it took the term genocide. So genocide is going on now in Gaza. But ethnic cleansing, which is another crime, it's going on all over since 1960, 47, 48 till today. Maybe in different terms, not necessarily always violent one, but it is a crime and it's still going on. Let me give you one example. In Jerusalem, we have the population, the Palestinian population in East Jerusalem, around 35% of the population in Jerusalem. And the Israelis are really, really mad about it. And they made so many plans to try to reduce the number of Palestinians in East Jerusalem in order to control it totally, and especially to control Al-Aqsa Mosque and Al-Aqsa area. So they tried. So what they do, they don't give the Palestinian permit to build a house, even on their own land. And if you build a house, okay, they will demolish it for you. Okay, so no way, no place now for the Palestinian to live. So because of that, they allow them to go outside the wall of Jerusalem in an area called Kufr Aqab. We have now an area, a neighborhood of 100,000 Palestinian Jerusalemites who are living in this area. It's outside the wall. Now, Israel could any day say, okay, all those outside the wall are not Palestinian, are not Jerusalemites, and they could get their identity withdrawn, and they would lose their status as Jerusalemite. This is an ethnic cleansing. No jobs, no building, no houses, and if you protest, you will be arrested, and then you have to go to find a job in Ramallah. If you are in Ramallah, okay, then you are not a Jerusalemite anymore. So it is an ethnic cleansing. What they are doing with us generally in the West Bank, with the settlers who are taking land today in the West Bank, right, making our villages to be a kind of hotels, okay? Because what's a village without land? When you took all the land, so it loses its soul as an agricultural or rural area. So what's going on now with these Palestinians? They try to find somewhere else to work, and maybe they will go outside. Especially when we are talking about, the big sector of educated Palestinians. 45,000 almost every year graduated from schools or from universities. Our market usually will take only around 4,000. So we are talking about another 40,000 every year. They don't find jobs. So immediately they will go to Jordan, they will go to Gulf states, they will go everywhere. to find jobs, because Israel is seizing 60% of the West Bank, right? Which is, according to Oslo Agreement, considered sea area under the Israeli control. And we can't even invest in this area. We can't use this area. We can't even have our agriculture, though we have our property there, but the Israeli are controlling it. So it means that Palestinians are silently, by an economic means, are pushed outside the country. So ethnically cleansing is continuing since 1948 till today. Genocide, what happened now in Gaza? It's an event for a period of time. But ethnically cleansing is a continuous and ongoing process against the Palestinians to leave the country and to stay out, because the Israeli wanted the land and they don't want the people.
I appreciate the answer, Doctor. Thank you so much.
You are welcome.
Thank you, Prof. Saad, for your response, and Mr. Izzuddin for your question. Just to quickly share something that's relevant to the conversation just now, I guess the common denominator for both genocide and ethnic cleansing is the target, the specific intent to target a specific group. So let's say if you're targeting a specific group of national, ethnic, or religious group, which by definition is already in the genocide definition itself under international law, then you have that sort of targeted ethnic cleansing. It's not randomized. It's not random people. It's specifically targeting a specific ethnic group, in this case, Palestinians. So we have another question from Sister Fazila Muhammad Othman, Miss Fazila, and her question is, seems like more people around the world have become more aware of the Palestine-Israel situation, but people in power still do not want to make the right decision. So how do we move from this phase?
Right. Yeah, this is a question which we repeat every day, and thank you for this question. Look, what's going on here, that Israel is part of, from the Zionist movement when it started, it is part of the colonialist white movement. And they were seen as part of this colonialist movement. And the British, when they helped the Zionist movement and gave them the Balfour Declaration and gave them Palestine, okay, they know that they are creating a Western entity in the middle of the heart of the Middle East. So they are supporting Israel because they consider Israel is part of this Western, if you like, colonialism at that time. And as I said many times, I don't think that an old colonialist will condemn a new colonialist. It's in the same way. So Israel managed, because of that, to give an image of Israel in the world generally. It's the only democracy, and it's always the victims, and always the Arabs and the Palestinians want to kill them, and all this kind of, rubbish kind of publicity that they were dominating the world media. Now, after this war, and thank God for the social media had helped a lot in bringing the story out, and they saw Israel, that it's presented to them as the only democracy, and what kind of democracy they do have, especially in this genocidal war going on in Gaza. And people started to realize the truth, and they start asking questions. And then they discovered that the problem didn't start on the 7th of October. It started 76 years ago, as we mentioned just in this today, this lecture. So and people started to look around and to find the truth, and that's why we have this movement in the students in America, in Europe, the movement of students who are really now pushing not only for their countries to make the decision to stop the war, but also they are taking even a further action by asking their universities to divest their investments and to withdraw all the investments from Israel, which is a great and huge move. Now, in comparison to what happened in South Africa. In South Africa, the apartheid regime, it started also in Europe and in around the world as a popular movement by students, by organizations, by who started the movement of boycott the apartheid regime in South Africa and make publicity about this regime till they reached the moment when the government took some decisions. Now we hope that with this today popular movements all over the world who are trying to bring out the idea of what's going on in Palestine and to condemn Israel not only for the 7th of October but as an apartheid colonialist regime, uh, that will affect the governments. It's not going to be on the short run, but definitely on a longer period of time, it will affect these governments. I didn't believe, for instance, just last week, that a country like Spain to say that we are recognizing Palestine, it means we are taking a stand against Israel. Even the vice prime minister in Spain who said that Palestine will be free from the river to the sea. That slogan, which is completely ignoring Israel and talk about one state. They will change. They will change, gradually, slowly. But we believe in the popular movements who are growing all over the world to bring out the truth and to pressurize their governments to take actions. Even America, who's participating in this war against us, Biden in a very bad situation now because he's going to the elections in a few months, and apparently the atmosphere in the United States started to change. Though United States is the number one country, not only supporting Israel, they are like hugging Israel. And they are helping them not only with weapon and with money, but also diplomatically by veto. And we expect now the sixth veto to come just in a few days when after the international court, the Justice Court came out with the resolution to stop the war on Rafah, and this should be taken a resolution by the United Nations Security Council, and definitely the Americans are going to use the veto again. So but there are now lots of changes in America itself that will have effect later on America and on other countries.
Thank you so much, Prof. That's a very detailed explanation. And thank you for the question. All right, next question from Mr. Aizat Najmis. Yes?
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh and good evening. I once read about the claim made by the Shirin Talat, the founder and director of MENAFEM. He said that this genocide is not about the claim of Israel protecting itself, but this genocide is about the oil. As stated on data, both of the coast and beneath the occupied land of Palestine, over 3 billion barrels of oil are estimated to exist. Is that the one of the reason on why the US truly supporting the Israel on the attack on Gaza? Can you enlighten me about it? Thank you.
Yeah, well, we know that there is a strategic relationship between Israel and the United States. And sometimes we have problems between administration and the government of Israel, but that won't affect the strategic relationship profounded by United States and Israel. Why? Why the United States supporting Israel to this extent? It's considered Israel as their own base, if you like, or their arm in the region, in the Middle East. And that's why they gave them all this support to show that Israel is the strongest country in the region and everyone should cooperate with it, from Gulf states, Arab states, and they should normalize relationship with them and creating a front against Iran, for instance. So they are supporting them because they know that strategically for their own relationship, it's good to have Israel in the region who's taking their job the especially dirty job, right, in controlling the area. And controlling the area mean controlling the American control over the oil in the region. Okay, which is absolutely true. So with Gulf states now allying with Israel, it means they are in the same line, and the American will continue to suck the oil from the Middle East, or especially from the Gulf states. If Israel is defeated, this is a big problem, because there are, you know, others who might be in the region strong, not only Iran, but we are talking about, you know, other, and it proven in this war, Hezbollah in Lebanon, Iraqis, Ansarullah in Iraq, and Yemenis, Houthis also who participated in this war. It means there is an axle for the resistance in the region, which they rejected the presence of America. And America would feel immediately that their interest in the region is threatened. So definitely they will, you know, support Israel, and keeping Israel as strong as it should be, in order to prevent this kind of changes happening in the region. And otherwise, the American will be kicked out from the region, and they don't want to reach to that moment. So because of that, they support Israel, and creating Israel as a strong army, the strongest in the region, which we prove that it is not strong, and it's really, you know, just a fake thing. And to keep all Arab countries, especially Gulf states, allying with Israel to keep its interest in the region.
Thank you, Doctor.
Thank you, Professor, for your answer. I have another question from one of our own colleagues here. Ilan Pape, the author of the Bush, Ilan Pape, the author of the book that you have mentioned, assessed that what is happening in Gaza at this moment is worse than the Nakba in the 1948 and worse than ethnic cleansing. Could you comment on this, Professor?
Well, yes, yes, and I heard many statements that for Mr. Ilan Mbappe. What he meant by that, as I mentioned, that the ethnic cleansing is going all the way since 1948, and ethnic cleansing, by definition, sometimes it might be in a very violent way, like what happened in 1948, by forcing people by massacres to get them out. And it might be like nowadays in a kind of a economic means, or pressurizing, or things like that. So not necessarily it's always violent, but genocide is something defined. Genocide is to kill and to exterminate a group of people totally. And that's why Ilan Mbappe is saying that what's going on today in Gaza, it's exterminating of the Palestinians. It's try to, you know, kill the Palestinians. That's it. It's not just pushing them out. It is something totally different. So it is more violent and more, you know, tragic than what happened in 1948. In 1948, Palestinians were pushed out of their country, and this is horrible thing, definitely. But now they are not even pushed out; they have been exterminated. They've been killed. It's a genocide in all its, you know, details. So genocide is definitely, in such case in Gaza, is more horrible and more important now than what happened in 1948. And we all assess that what's going on today in Gaza is even worse than what happened in 1948. Because also another reason that also in 1948, Israel pushed the Palestinian out, and they wanted to create a state. So they were focusing also in creating a state and to show it to the world as a democracy and this. But this government and this Israel today, which is a total fascist and turning to the right wing, Zionist religious parties like Smotrich and Ben Gvir, who are calling for killing all the Palestinians or exposing of all the Palestinians. And they are talking about building settlements in Gaza now. Yeah, can you imagine that? So it's taking another flavor today, because the Israelis are became more violent and more to the right and more fascist, and they don't care even when the world, all the world is saying no, and the criminal court is issuing orders against Netanyahu and Gallant, they don't care. And they describe yesterday, they described the United Nations as anti-Semitic, and they described the courts anti-Semitic, and that everyone is conspiring against them. They don't care. They don't care. They believe always that they are above the law. That's why they do what they are doing now of genocide. Genocide for us today, Palestinians, is definitely worse than what happened to us in 1948.
Yeah, it's very disheartening to know that a country can just easily get away with killing 30,000 people. Um, on that note, though, and on top of just building on to the conversation, I guess that in 2024, in the 21st century, when you kill more than 30,000 people in cold blood, it's really hard to get away with it, even with the backing of a superpower. Because nowadays, right, I think you have social media, information technology, as opposed to in 1948 during the Nakba, where you didn't have all of that that you want to share to the world. So social media, I guess it's showing the world everything, all the atrocities, the carpet bombings, and so on, the indiscrimination killing of non-combatants, women and children, especially all of that, and on top of a youth population that's more globally aware and critical of their governments. Um, Now, I just have a question of my own, actually, Prof.
Mhm.
Um,
Yes,
and again, just to the audience out there, if you have any further questions before we wrap up, feel free to ask. So my question is, I've been getting engaged in a lot of, I guess, back and forth debates and discussions with proponents of the Israeli government, pro-Zionist supporters, and all that, and just to get in their perspective to know um, how their arguments and what their key points are, and I feel like it's indefensible because you can easily break down their arguments. But that being said, I'm just wondering, how would you respond to, say, a question like which people keep deflecting because it's all about the framing, right? Where, oh, but there are Palestinian Israelis inside Israel. So when you have people like Nas Daily, I'm not sure if you know Nusser
Mhm.
Yassin, the prominent internet personality and YouTuber, and then people have been saying that, oh, but in Israel you have Palestinian Israelis with Israeli citizenship, and then you have members of Knesset, Ayman Odeh, and
Mm.
all of that. And then, so this sort of like deflection skews the reality of what's actually going on the ground. And how would you respond to this? Because it's always a fallacious statement, a red herring, just to detract from the actual attention of the focus of the argument. And then they say that, oh, you have Palestinian Israelis, contributing to society, living in Israel, nothing's happening to them, no discrimination, and so on. So it doesn't really portray an accurate picture, and I think it's just an easy argument for them to just throw it whenever the issue of genocide or apartheid comes up. So if you could comment on that, please. Thank you,
Yeah,
Professor.
sure. Sure, in many ways. Well, uh, uh, after the expulsion of the Palestinians in 1948, 120,000 Palestinians remained. Okay, and these are the indigenous people of Palestine. Israel created with those people under their rule, so they accept them, 120,000. Today, there are 1.8 million, the same 120,000. So there are around 21% of the total population in Israel, the Palestinians who are living in Israel, like Ayman Odi that they are mentioning. And they were under military rule till 1966. After that, the military rule or the martial law was left, and now they are lived supposedly normally. But how normally are they living? There are in the Knesset 65 laws that discriminate between Jews and Palestinian Arabs. 65 laws. But the most important one is 2017 law, which is a few years from now, is talking about the Jewish state, that Israel is a pure Jewish state. And anyone who's not a Jew definitely have not the same rights. For instance, The right of land is only for the Jews because this is a Jewish state. It means that deprive the Palestinians from their basic rights. And when you say this is a state for only Jews, okay, it means that all these citizens that you talked about, Danny, as you know, practicing their life, they are second grade citizens. Then definitely. And where is that from democracy? And how much this democracy is there? It's quite clear that there is no democracy in Israel because it is a discriminating regime against the Palestinians in so many ways and in everything. Well, ask them how many Palestinian working in the foreign ministry of Israel. How many Palestinians? We are talking about 21% of the Palestinians are, living in Israel, of the society in Israel. How many are there in the schools, in the universities? 6% only. That's why most of their students, they come to the West Bank to study in our universities, in Birzeit and in the American Arab University and in Bethlehem, because they can't study in the Israeli universities. 6% only. There should be 21% of the universities Palestinians in that matter. In jobs, in everything, there is discrimination. There is discrimination against the Palestinians. So Israel can't say that they are living normally, and they can't say at all that there is no discrimination. Now, this is one issue. Let's ask about what's going on in the West Bank and in Gaza. What that have to do with the genocide that you are committing in Gaza and the war that you are waging against the West Bank, and especially with the settlers, grabbing the land from the Palestinians, burning the olive trees and burning houses in the West Bank, apart from what's going on in Gaza. If Israel was good, so good to the Palestinians who are living there, what does it mean? Even if it does, have a good relation with the Palestinian Arabs who are living inside Israel. What does it mean for us, in the West Bank and in Gaza? Is that enough that you were good for part of the Palestinians that will allow you to have genocide against the others? It's not a truth. Plus, you created the Palestinian Arabs who are living inside Israel. You created the state why they are there. They are the original people. They are the indigenous people of Palestine. You are the newcomers. It's not the other way around. So definitely they have their own rights, which you deny them. Even you deny them these rights. So I think that the whole thing about Israel being a democracy and they are giving the Palestinian Arabs inside Israel all their rights is absolutely a fake story. They went to the European Union, the Palestinian Arabs, and they went to the United Nations to protest against some of the laws by Israel and the discrimination against the laws. What happened in 1976 when they wanted to confiscate their land, and there was the Land Day, where 6 Palestinians were killed? What happened during the Second Intifada when 13 Palestinians from Israel, citizens, were killed? Do you think that the Israeli police will treat Jews in the same way in a demonstration, which now we have lots of demonstration against the government in Israel? They will treat them the same way that they treated the Palestinian Arabs if they have a demonstration. When they have a demonstration, the first incident, 6 were killed. Second incident, when 13 were killed, but none of the Israeli Jews were killed in a demonstration by the police. So is that a democracy or a discrimination?
Thank you, Prof, for breaking down your answer, and I'll use that in future engagements. All right, so another question we have is your projection on the future development of the event in Gaza in light of ICC arrest warrants, ICJ rulings, and the latest 3 European countries to formally recognize Palestine. What would happen to the Palestinians, the 1.4 million in Rafah, in light of all these? Your prediction.
Right. Well, first of all, on the longer run, I am absolutely optimist. I think that the 7th of October had shaken the world, shaking the world really hard on all levels, on the Palestinian internal politics, on the Israeli internal politics, in the regional politics, as well as internationally. So I think 7th of October is a milestone in the history of humankind. Now, with these rulings by the ICG and ICC, still Israel might, not comply, and the Americans might help them. But I think that the next step by the many of the world countries, when Israel refused to comply with these rulings, that to start really boycotting and eliminate their relationship with Israel. And that's what we wanted on the longer run, especially with the BDS movement. They are talking about, divest and sanctions, and then to reach to reach to the boycott. Uh, the boycott, like, that will be, the same lines like what happened with South Africa. By the end of the day, this regime will collapse as a colonialist, racist regime, Zionist regime. So I think that we should continue doing what we are doing in boycott the products, the Israeli products, and even the companies that supporting Israel. So no one will support Israel anymore. Otherwise, he will be boycotted, like what happened with Coca-Cola, KFC, and McDonald's, and lots of companies who've been, boycotted by the people around the world. So I believe that Israel is not going to comply with any of the resolutions of the courts, depending on American support and the veto by Americans. On the one hand, the Israeli can't get it into their mind that they are not above the law. So far, since 1948 till today, Israel managed to be above the law, and and no sanctions were imposed against Israel. Um, Today, there was a speak in the European Union about, the special treatment for Israel. Israel is member of the Chamber of Commerce in European Union, which their charter indicates that we deal with countries economically according to their human rights files. Is there any more human rights files for Israel? So I think that they will start taking actions by putting pressure on Israel by, boycott or reduce the relationship, things like that in some countries, and maybe other countries they will say we are boycotting Israel totally. So that will be on the longer run, but definitely, as I said from the very beginning, I'm optimistic about the future. This regime, based from the very beginning on a big mistake and a big violent issues, it will definitely go away, and it's not going to continue. And that depends on us. The more we have popular movements around the world, pressurizing their government, and Israel will provide you every day with a new evidence of its atrocities and their violence and their human rights and international law violations. So every day we will have a new evidence, but what to do with it? That's the question. If we continue to take actions, I believe that we will, affect the governments and affect everyone around the world, and that will reduce the power of Israel totally, and then it will collapse.
Thank you, Professor. I think I share your sentiments as well. I feel optimistic about how there's this growing
Mhm.
understanding and awareness about Israeli atrocities. No longer are they immune to the crime that they've been committing and are committing. It's like there's growing international pressure, and it especially isolates and singles out the United States as the biggest hypocrisy, um, practicing double standards, especially when it comes to Ukraine, and Russia and China for that matter.
Mhm. Mhm.
So it does seem different now than other conflicts in the past involving Palestine, Israel, like in 2014, the years before. I feel like I think you're right in that it does seem like there's big change and coming, but it just takes time, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
Right.
Yeah. Don't think there's any more questions. So, with that, thank you so much, Professor, for your time
Yeah,
and sharing with us your knowledge in detail. Um, we really appreciate that. So, I hope you have a lovely day ahead, and I hope everyone else would be able to learn a lot today. And stay tuned for future talk sessions by AIIAD and SOIS here at University of Utara, Malaysia. Thank you so much, Professor.
you are welcome. Thank you, Danny, and I will thank all the audience as well. And yes, I'm looking forward for further cooperation and further even sessions that would help us and would help you also understanding what's going on with your brothers in Palestine. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Have a nice day.
You too.
Very nice day.